Welcome to Insight Marketing Success, the podcast where marketing knowledge meets real-world experience, from vision to execution.
Welcome to IMS. Today we have Ronald Rojas with us. Ronald, tell us about yourself.
Perfect. That's a open-ended question, but my name is Ronald. I was born and raised in New York City, specifically Washington Heights. If you know, you know. It is a Dominican neighborhood. It is loud. It is colorful. It is full of hustle, both of the good kind and of the bad kind. You know, my parents are also from the Dominican Republic, and honestly, that's where I got most of my business education. So it wasn't in the classroom. So, and like I said, my family's from the Dominican Republic. So I grew up seeing a lot of what life was like there and seeing my dad negotiate with street vendors and negotiate in the supermarkets. And, you know, my mom was a housekeeper and she used to clean apartments in New York. So I grew up seeing her negotiate cleaning prices with clients and manage her own schedule and handle difficult conversations with customers, all without both of my parents without a middle school, education. So
Wow.
that was all my business seminars and my business classes growing up. So and
So
they
what
did
would
all
you
of that with
say,
a lot of confidence.
what would you say is your title today?
I wear multiple hats right now. So I own and operate a fix and flip company. I own and operate also a managing partner at a wholesaling outfit and a property management company as well. I most recently started a multifamily commercial development company called Anchorline Development, and I'm the principal and co-founder of that. So that's pretty much what keeps me busy today.
Awesome. You're an entrepreneur. That's what you are.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the process of starting your first business, how did you get your brand going? Obviously, when you first started, you are Latino. I can say you're very outspoken. But how did you get your first projects and how did you brand it yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as far as getting my brand going, so one of my favorite authors is Stephen Covey. He writes a lot of business books. So he says that one of my favorite quotes from him is to begin with the end in mind. So that's always been one of my operating principles. My dad instilled that in me as well. If you don't know what you're doing, there's no reason to be doing it. So I tend to try to know where it is that I'm going before it is that I start going. And that allows me to work backwards. So when I started my brand or when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I wanted to have an idea of where it is that I was going. And for me, where I was going was trying to make an impact in the real estate world. So that allowed me to have a very clear understanding of where I wanted to position myself. So in the residential side of things, we work with a lot of distressed sellers. So understanding where it is that I want to take those sellers allowed me to brand myself as the honest, authentic person that has no alternative motive. And if I can offer you something that is of help, then great. But if not, then that's totally fine too.
Okay. I like that. So you were helping them to go through the problems that they were experiencing, and that's the positioning you had, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I lead with vulnerability. That's always been my philosophy. I think I've noticed consistently that when I show up very like authentic, that people that allows people to also show up as their authentic self, right?
Awesome.
When I'm honest about the hard parts, it gives people permission to also be honest about the hard parts, right?
Yeah.
It just disarms the room, right?
Yeah.
It turns a transaction into a real conversation. And so that has always been, without question, I would say one of the strongest strengths that I've been able to develop is just communicating effectively and authentically.
Great. That's a fantastic approach. Love it. I agree with you. Tell me about a situation where you invested in marketing and you expected to get something like this and you received this. but you had a big lesson learned?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of branding and like I guess marketing mistakes if we're gonna put them under that bucket. Especially as an entrepreneur, you're just gonna make a lot of mistakes. If I were going to think about one, I'm probably going to think about one of the more costly ones. I'm going to probably lean that direction.
Yes, please do.
So I think early on, I confused lead volume with business health. And so I thought that if I just had a lot of leads, I just had a lot of people wanting to talk to me, that my business would be great, right? And that's because someone early on told me that if you had enough leads, you'll never have a revenue problem, right?
Mhm.
And there might be some truth to that, but I really took that literally. So I just
Mhm.
started throwing money at marketing, just throwing all the money that I could at marketing. And so I had tons of lead flow, but we weren't growing, and I didn't understand why. And so the problem actually was that we had a sales conversion issue. So we had a ton of people coming in, but we couldn't convert those people into serious money,
Yeah.
right? And so we were
Qualify.
losing. Yeah, yeah,
The qualifying. So the leads quality was not there.
exactly. Well, not just that, but we didn't even know how to qualify, right? Like the leads were there, we didn't know how to qualify, segment the leads into either a cold bucket or warm bucket or hot bucket, and therefore we weren't able to convert at a high level, right? We didn't know how to segment our time, right, and who to spend our time with. We might have been spending a lot of our time with cold leads when we should have been spending our time with hot leads. We didn't have our stuff together, right? And so
Yeah.
really our funnel had a hole in it, but I kept trying to fill that hole with just money, just throwing
Yeah.
money at the marketing, right?
Yeah.
And so over time, I realized that the lesson was people buy solutions, right? People buy solutions and they want to buy it from someone who can confidently solve their problem. If your sales process and your marketing process can't communicate to a client or a customer that you can confidently solve their problem, it doesn't matter how many people you have lined up in front of your store. It doesn't matter how many people you have knocking at your, filling out your forms online. If you can't communicate that confidently that you can solve their problem, you're just going to spend a lot of money on marketing.
Yeah. Clarity has become so important. So important. Tell me,
Yeah.
what's the biggest trend you see in marketing or competition in your industry today?
Repeat the question.
The biggest trend you see right now in your field in
Yeah.
marketing.
I mean, hands down, I would say the biggest trend, and there's always trends, right? But the biggest trend right now is probably going to be AI, and anything that's automation, right? Economies of scale is very, very important in the marketing world. So essentially, you want to do a bang, and you want to create the loudest boom, right?
Mhm.
And so, and you want to, essentially, you want to use as little energy creating that bang, and you want that bang to, even though you use a little bit of energy, you want that bang to make a very loud boom, right? That's
Yes.
usually like the formula, right?
Yeah. A spark that goes up, big boom. Got it. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. If you can just light one candle and that candle can just light 1,000 other candles, that creates an efficiency, for you, right? And so, um, what AI has done to our field is it's a multiplying engine, right? It doesn't just help, it multiplies. And so that's the biggest trend. Anything that you can leverage AI to multiply your efforts, it's typically going to save you on dollars. I hate to say that, but it's just going to save you on dollars. It's going to save you on energy, and it's also going to collapse time. So that's the biggest trend that I'm seeing.
Well said. Well said. All right. I know you have different businesses, so let's pick up one of your business. Okay, the one that is, let's call it the most profitable, the most stable.
Okay.
Which business would that be?
I would say it's either going to be our wholesaling operation or a fix and flip company.
Okay, let's go with fix and flip. Okay, so in fix and flip, who will be your best customer? So who will be your ideal person that you want to buy a home from?
Yeah, great question. So I would say in both the wholesaling operation and fix and flip, our ideal, what we refer to as an ICP, or ideal customer profile, is going to be someone who is very motivated to sell, right? And is going through some sort of distress or has a pain point, right? And the reason I say is going through some sort of distress or some sort of pain point is because, like I mentioned earlier, your value proposition as a company is you have to solve a problem, right? And you have to confidently be able to tell someone that you can solve that problem. So
Mhm.
as as a as a fix and flipper, right, I make my money through making a profit, right? Arbitrage, right? I make a profit through buying something low, renovating, adding value to something that is not so nice, and then selling it for some, for a higher price. So I have to find someone who's willing to leave a little bit of equity on the table in exchange for convenience. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
so who is that person? Who's that person who's willing to maybe sell a property for a little bit less than it's worth? Why? Because I'm able to come in and buy it from them very quickly, or
Mhm.
in a private way, so that their neighbors aren't bothering them, or the market doesn't know that they're going through this problem, right? I'm able to handle it in a way that is comfortable for them, right? So ultimately, my ideal customer profile is someone who's going through some level of distress, and they're looking for someone who can come in, take care of it on their terms, and they're willing to trade a little bit of that equity that they have built into the property for
So
what I'm coming in to do.
it would be divorce, it would be losing a job, moving someplace, or
Yeah,
parents
I mean,
moving
it
place. Mhm.
it could be a number of people. So yeah, I mean, the top ones are going to be typically, someone going through foreclosure, someone going through divorce, someone going through bankruptcy, someone moving and relocating and maybe need a quick sale. Um, but it doesn't also have to be something negative in nature. It could also be, I've dealt with someone who has a very high price point home, and they just don't want their two neighbors on the both sides of them to know that they're selling. Why? Because the neighbors have been asking them for the last 12 years, hey, sell me your house. So if they put the for sale sign in their yard, the neighbors are going to know that they're not selling them the house. So they'd rather sell it to me and move to Texas. And by the time the neighbor knows, they're already out of the state. You know what I'm saying? And so
Interesting.
it's a little different. Everyone's still a little different.
All right, let's talk about you. I enjoy you as a person. You have a really nice energy. So let's talk about you. Let's imagine that you go to a restaurant and you're in those booths that you cannot see in front, you cannot see behind you. But as you start eating, you hear your three best friends talking about Ron, about you. And what are the three things you will want them to say about you?
Three things that I would want them to say about me.
Yeah.
That's a good question. So I would say, I think you kind of alluded to it. Like there's a certain like energy that I think I bring, and I'm very consistent with that. Like what you see is what you get, and I think that's always been the case with me. If you've been in my village for any length of time, the way that I was at 16 is the way that I was at 25, and it's the way that I am right now at 36, right? And so, what I would love my friends to say is that, you know, I would say Ronald is just transparent and honest, right? He he's always going to shoot it straight. He's always going to shoot it straight. So you're always going to get a very authentic version of Ronald, right? He's never going to put up a facade, and so that's one thing I would love and appreciate if they said about me. Um, Another thing I would appreciate if they said about me is I go above and beyond. I go above and beyond for any mission that I'm on. If I think I'm on a mission, you best believe my objective is to not just accomplish the mission, but if there's anything that I can do to do 1% more, that's typically the way that I'm wired. And it's less about the other person, and it's more about my own sense of fulfillment. I just like giving 1% more. I got that from my mom. When she would clean apartments, she would do one little thing so that when the person would get home, they would notice one nice thing, and they would get home with a smile, right? And just see something nice, right? Beyond
Great.
just the scope of work, right? And then the third thing I would say is no matter where, how far or what rooms I might find myself in, I'm always going to keep a certain sense of humility.
Good.
Yeah, a certain
Good.
sense of humility.
Awesome. Well,
I'm never. I don't think I'm ever going to get too prideful to just rip open a mango and just eat it with my hands next to my family, right?
no, I
Couched over a
understand.
bucket, that sort
I
of thing.
understand. All right. You and I both know you're 36. You know that life, you is what you make. But sometimes there are personal things or professional things that get you out of equilibrium, right? And so you get stressed. And so when you get stressed, and how do you go back to becoming and getting your energy? What keeps you grounded? What brings you back to that energy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love this question because being grounded is like definitely like up my alley. I'm like a hippie at heart. So I would say, let me think about this. So firstly, my wife. She's my rock. They say that the person that you end up marrying or spending your life with could either be your greatest asset or your biggest liability. And for me, my wife has turned out to be the best investment I've ever made. And I've been with her since I was young. So that investment has been compounding for a very long time. And so she sees me for who I am. She sees me clearly. I'm not a highlight reel. She knows who I am, and she's a very stabilizing, grounding force in my life. And so there's no habit or system that can ever replicate that. So I would say my wife is an incredible grounding force in my life. Another thing I would say is my health. I've had some stress related, anxiety related, overwork related health concerns come up over the last 12 years of my career, like real ones. And I would say those recalibrated my priorities very, very quickly. It's interesting how health can make you look at life a little different. And so I think health helps me stay grounded, just self-care, right? Whatever the person defines as self-care, I think, can help you stay very, very grounded. And the last thing I would say besides health, and it's on the topic of health, is just mental framework. Like I spend a lot of time reflecting and thinking about things and deeply about things. And so one of my is when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so when I feel like I'm overwhelmed or I don't feel grounded, what I try to do is I try to look at that same situation a little differently. And I try to ask myself whether the story that I'm telling myself is what's really happening. And if it's what's really true, 9 times out of 10, I tend to shift, what I'm doing and how I'm handling the situation, because it isn't the circumstance, right? It's how I'm looking at the circumstances.
Ron, it has been a pleasure having you here today. I look forward to getting to know you better and collaborating with you in the future. But for now, thank you for being part of IMS, and appreciate it very, very much.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for listening to Insight Marketing Success, where marketing knowledge meets real-world experience from vision to execution.